All right, welcome to Talking Investing. I am Tom, and as always, this is not financial advice. Today, I want to go through Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. We're going to talk about what happened last week. We're going to talk about a giant trend that continues. While Bitcoin is going one way, the Bitcoin miners are going another. And we're also going to talk about some big news that came out for a Bitcoin miner this morning, Monday morning. In addition to that, we'll go through all of our normal charts, week to date, year to date, and take a look at what's going on. So if you're new here, we talk about Bitcoin and Bitcoin miners all the time on this channel. If that is content that you're interested in, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, we'd like to set a goal. If we're trying to get 500 likes on this video, so do us a gigantic favor. If you could please smash the like button, it does help the channel out a lot. All right, let's get to it. Let's talk about Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. I'm going to quickly talk about Bitcoin, then I'm going to go to some news for a Bitcoin miner, and then I want to look at what the Bitcoin miners did last week because it is a continuation of a giant trend for the really last 2.5+ months. So let's dive into it. First, we'll take a look at the Bitcoin chart on the 1-day time frame. So on Friday, we did have a gigantic candle wick down, as you probably remember. We do have a new lower low here in this 4-month period of time that we've been going sideways with Bitcoin. So we were holding this line at 56,500. We set that back on May 1st. That was over 2 months ago. That line held. And then on Friday, we had a gigantic sell-off at the beginning of the day. Now you will see there's a huge candle wick to the downside. Some buying pressure did come in. The ETFs had a big buying day on Friday, so I think they bought up this dip in a big way. We got back above this line at 56,500. That held. We did break below that one day over the weekend. Monday morning here, we're currently above that again, so we are struggling to hold this line. We are at the very, very bottom of the trading range that we've been in. Bitcoin's been trading sideways for 4 full months now, and we are at the very low end of that, and we do risk potentially losing this last line of support here. You can see this gold line, which is right on top of the blue line. That is where Bitcoin was when the U.S. equity markets closed on Friday, so we were pegged right at that line. If we lose this line, then there's a few points lower than this. The next point lower that I'm looking at is somewhere just under $52,000. So Bitcoin's short-term struggle here is this line at 56,500. This is either going to continue as support or turn into resistance, so I think we're going to find that out over the next couple of days. So that's what I'm going to be looking for Bitcoin itself. It's worth noting that Bitcoin peaked on March 12th at somewhere just under $74,000. That's this purple line up here. Since then, to the dip on Friday, the bottom of that candle wick on Friday was down at 53,500. So that's about a 27.5% pullback. That's the biggest pullback we've had in this about 19-month bull run that Bitcoin is in right now. So just for perspective, typically in previous bull markets, we have had a series of 30% pullbacks. So while this is frustrating, this is not unusual. The one thing that I would point out that is a little unusual is this is about a 4-month window of time. So that is one of the longer time frames for a pullback. However, this does correspond with the fact that we recently had the Bitcoin halving, and it is very common after a halving to have several months, even up to 6 or 8 months of consolidation before Bitcoin starts to make its next big move to the upside. So all of that, we're going to have to wait and see what happens. That's what's going on with Bitcoin. On the flip side, the Bitcoin miners have a different story. I want to get to the charts for the Bitcoin miners. First, I do want to go through one big piece of news that came out this morning for one Bitcoin miner, and that is Bitfarms. So Bitfarms this morning put out this press release. Bitfarms appoints Ben Gagnon as Chief Executive Officer. So this has been an ongoing saga. The previous CEO left on not good terms. It was a very confusing journey. We've talked about it on this channel quite a bit. And in fact, we've talked on the private members only live stream and on the public stream several times that Ben Gagnon seems like a very good choice for a potential new CEO to this company. So we've been talking about that for months, and now this morning they have announced that that is the way that they are going. So they've had a search out there, but in the end they take somebody from within. We've had Ben on the channel. I want to congratulate Ben for this promotion. This is part of a larger ongoing saga. There is a potential takeover attempt here by Riot to buy Bitfarms. In fact, Riot launched a website today presenting their argument as to why they think that Bitfarms should sell themselves to Riot. If you guys are interested in this, if you want to learn more about this situation with Bitfarms and Riot and what's going on there, drop a comment in the comments section below, and maybe we'll do a separate video on that if you guys are interested in that. But I do think this is a big move for Bitfarms. They had a void, they had a vacancy at their CEO. That vacancy has been filled, and it has been filled from somebody within their company. And again, that news came out this morning, Monday morning. Okay, now let's take a look at the charts for what the Bitcoin miners have done. Well, Bitcoin has been struggling, like we talked about. It's now 4 months that Bitcoin has been trading sideways inside of a range, and really we are at the very bottom of that range as we speak. Conversely, the Bitcoin miners have been doing very well in this period of time. So the first chart I'm going to look at is just week over week of what happened last week, and you're going to see some of these weekly charts look like annual charts, and this has been a trend. This is just a 1 week chart. Iris Energy was up 33% last week. TeraWulf was up 25% last week. Those two led the way, but you're going to see several of the Bitcoin miners were up double digits last week. Every single one of the 12 Bitcoin miners that we're following on this channel was in the green, and this on a week where Bitcoin itself, you'll see in gold here at the bottom, was down 6%. So this is another week where Bitcoin was sideways or down, and the Bitcoin miners, some of them were off to the races. So a gigantic week for the Bitcoin miners. This trend continues. This trend has now been going on for just short of 3 months. We've been talking about this every single week for the last 3 months. The two Bitcoin miners that had the smallest gains on the week were actually the two Bitcoin miners that have the largest market cap. So that is Marathon, which was up 2%, and CleanSpark up 1%. So still they were in the green. They outperformed Bitcoin considerably, but they are lagging behind. Some of the mid-sized Bitcoin miners continue to make up ground and have been off to the races. So that leads me to the next chart. This is now an 11.5 week period, so we have been following this really since the beginning. On April 16th, we talked about the fact that it looked like all the Bitcoin miners put a local low in, and that it seemed like there was a shift in momentum and that the Bitcoin miners were about to take a nice run. So far, we're almost 3 full months into this, and it has been playing out that way. All 12 of the Bitcoin miners have considerably outperformed Bitcoin in this period of time. Some of these Bitcoin miners have had gigantic runs. We've had doubles, triples, and very nearly a quadruple. And this, again, is just in a period that's less than 3 months. So in that time, you're going to see in gold at the bottom, Bitcoin is down 10%. So while Bitcoin has struggled really for the last 4 months, the last 3 of those months, the Bitcoin miners have really started to run. Core Scientific is now up 288% in just less than 3 months. Iris Energy is up 261%. TeraWulf is now up over 200%, 207%. HUT has more than doubled, up 137%. BitDeer's more than doubled, up 121%. And BitDigital has more than doubled, up 103%. All the rest of the Bitcoin miners are in the green. The two laggers are CleanSpark up 17%, and it is worth noting, while CleanSpark's at the bottom of this list, for the first 3.5 months of the year, CleanSpark was the only Bitcoin miner in the green, so they had significantly outperformed their peers. So some of this is just things evening out a little bit. Riot is in second last place on this chart, up 22%, and they are actually the worst performer year to date. We'll take a look at that chart in a minute as well. Okay, so that brings us to our next chart, which is year to date. Okay, so this is what the Bitcoin miners have done year to date. And I want to note, a few months ago, every single Bitcoin miner, with the exception of one, which is CleanSpark, was red on this chart. And a lot of the Bitcoin miners were down 30 or 40 or 50 or some even 60% year to date. So the first 3.5 months of the year, from January 1st through April 16th, was very difficult for the Bitcoin miners. But now you can see, from a year to date standpoint, we now have 4 Bitcoin miners that are outperforming Bitcoin. We have 7 of the 12 Bitcoin miners that are in the green, which means they're positive year to date. So when we talked about this 3 months ago, this seemed like almost an unbelievable scenario, but it has unfolded this way. So if we go through this list, TeraWulf now, this is the 3rd week in a row that TeraWulf is the best performing Bitcoin miner year to date. They are up 133% year to date. We have 2 Bitcoin miners that have more than doubled in the year 2024. So that's TeraWulf at 133% and Iris Energy at 110%. But we also have Core Scientific up 85% 40% year to date, and CleanSpark up 46% year to date. So all four of those are outperforming Bitcoin. Bitcoin is now up 34% year to date. It's worth noting at one point they were up as much as 60% year to date. So you can see we really are trading at the bottom of this trading range. We're at about a 4-month low for Bitcoin. Although even with that said, you can see year to date Bitcoin's performing very well, up 34%. We have three others in the green. HUT is now up 24%, BitDeer 17%, and Cypher up 14%. We have a few more that seem ready to flip into the green. Bitfarms down 8%, Marathon 14%, BitDigital 16%. So I'm looking for those to potentially go green over the next couple of weeks if this trend continues. The two that seem to be lagging behind, Hive is down 26%. Hive has started to move. So really that just leaves Riot. Riot, you're going to see, is the worst performer year to date, down 38%. So that is dramatically underperforming its peers. Riot a year ago was the #1 market cap out of all the Bitcoin miners. Since then, it has seen Marathon and then CleanSpark and now Iris Energy pass them in market cap. So they've in the last year gone from #1 market cap to the #4 market cap. So Riot is the lagger both in market cap and stock price performance. So we're going to see if the second half of the year, if they can start to make a move and catch up, or if they are just going to stay behind. Just to take a quick look, let's compare the cryptocurrencies to what's going on in the overall market. This is the first week this year that Bitcoin and Ethereum are not leading the way on this chart. Bitcoin is still in first place, up 34%, but silver has moved into second place, up 32%. Ethereum now essentially is up 30% year to date. The cryptocurrencies still are doing well comparatively speaking, but there has been a big pullback. The altcoins have gotten beat up even worse than Bitcoin and Ethereum. And then the two I really want to talk about are the NASDAQ is up over 22% and the S&P 500 is up just under 17%. Both of those once again hit a new all-time high last week. So this is a series of new all-time highs. This is another thing we pointed out a couple of months ago on the channel when both of these did hit an all-time high. What tends to happen after a breakout like this, the most normal outcome after an index hits an all-time high is that it hits a series of new all-time highs. So we are seeing that run continue. Now, that doesn't mean that will go on forever. Obviously, please, none of this is financial advice. We don't know the future, but this has played out the way we've expected it. This has been a very strong year. This is really not what big money had predicted coming into this year. Most of the predictions were that this was going to be a very flat year. Some people actually were predicting that the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 would be down on the year. Now, of course, the year is only half over, so we'll see how the second half of the year plays out. But so far, it's been a very strong year, particularly for the NASDAQ and the S&P 500. It is worth noting, as I note every week, the Russell 2000 is lagging behind. This continues to lag. We're over 3 years into the Russell 2000, seriously lagging the NASDAQ and the S&P 500. This is the only one of the major U.S. indexes that is in the red. It has been flipping back and forth between green and red, and you'll see it's virtually at almost exactly zero, but it is technically a little bit red year to date, so that continues to lag. The last thing I want to take a look at is quickly just take a look at the Fear and Greed Index, and we were at 28 yesterday on the Fear and Greed Index, so that is in fear. We did get down as low as 26 on the weekend, and that is the lowest number of the year. And you can see just 1 month ago, we were at 72, which was in greed. So we've gone from greed to fear in a short period of time. So I do think this is one of the things that potentially is spelling out a bottoming out process for Bitcoin. There's several technical things we've been looking at that show that maybe we're going through a bottoming out process for this pullback in Bitcoin. However, we don't know how long this will take and when this will turn around. We're clearly in a short-term bearish trend for Bitcoin. We're now over 3 weeks, coming up on a month, into Bitcoin really going in the wrong direction. So one of the main things we'll be looking for on this channel is there a line of support nearby that Bitcoin can find its footing and reverse this bearish trend and get back onto our bigger picture bull run that hopefully we are still in the early phases of. So that's everything that's going on with Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. We'll stay tuned this week. Drop any thoughts or comments down below. And again, if you're new here, consider subscribing to the channel. And of course, everybody do us a giant favor and smash the like button. Thanks again so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.